But uh, Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz, despite the U.S. protestations, is just going to be a reminder again of the limits of U.S. power. And so Iran, I think, is going to be playing a bigger role within BRICS. And I guess I don't think Pakistan is currently part of BRICS, and the Saudis say what?
Pakistan is not part of BRICS.
Yeah, it's not part of BRICS, and the Saudis are sort of on the edge. They're not sure whether they want to be part or they don't want to be part. They're trying to figure that out. But once you get to a stage where if Pakistan decides to join BRICS, then this is going to be it'll be a serious signal to the West of declining influence throughout the region. And I see coming out of that move towards what you were talking about earlier, that out of the SCO, out of BRICS, will emerge a security function. And see, remember that both Russia and China have been talking about this new security architecture in the Persian Gulf, and Pakistan's been playing the leading role in developing that. So that's where we can see a situation where you've got a coming together of Pakistan ultimately getting into BRICS. I think that may be where they are headed.
But Pakistan is a full member of the SCO, Larry.
Yeah,
that is important. I don't know what is the reason that they're not part of BRICS, but SCO is as important as BRICS. I think the hardcore of BRICS is SCO.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that I would assume that's because of Pakistan's long-standing relationship with China.
Because looking at the SCO, we have China, Russia, India, Pakistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, and Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
So you have India and Pakistan, both of them in the SCO, which we know the friction between the two sides, and being part of the a security structure, which is the SCO. So that I don't see any sort of problem for them to be part of BRICS. And maybe they're receiving some sort of pressure from the United States not to be part of BRICS, because they're so much connected. Basically, the military in Pakistan is so much connected with the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, this, I don't think Pakistan is under the kind of control or influence of the United States is I think is popularly perceived. And I had this discussion the other day with another podcaster, Suleiman Ahmed, that I think the let's call it the public view is that Pakistan is a lackey, it's a vassal of the United States. And the United States says jump, and the Pakistanis will say, well, how high? But I don't think that's it at all.
Yeah.
It has been, and I'm drawing back on my experience as an analyst of Honduras and during the wars with the Central American wars and particularly the war on Nicaragua. There was the U.S. had viewed Honduras as this inferior, stupid, not very bright country that we had under our control, and that they'd have to do what we told them to do. But the reality was, out of that arrogance and disrespect on the American side, is the Hondurans were they were sometimes running circles around us on certain issues. We'd think we'd have an agreement to do X and they'd be doing Y. So I see in Pakistan, that being done on a much broader level. It is true that during the 1980s, Pakistani truck drivers and businessmen profited from the U.S. covert operation against the Soviets. A lot of people made money off of that. And then in 2003, when the United States, in 2001, after we go into Afghanistan to go after Osama bin Laden, and then bin Laden escapes across the border and is in Pakistan for the next, 10 years, 12 years, that the United States needed a lot of supplies in Afghanistan that they'd come via ocean container, get offloaded in, say, Karachi or the other port, and then be trucked into Afghanistan. So those truck drivers, they made a ton of money off of the United States and hauling that kind of equipment. So this, it was never, the United States liked to think it was in charge, but the Pakistanis controlled, they controlled the logistics in effect. And I always maintain logistics is the key to any of these conflicts. So here we now got Munir, and yes, Munir ousted Imran Khan.
Yeah.
And Imran Khan was, he's a Trump-like figure, populist, popular. He was a football hero, but apparently they got into a dispute over who was going to call the shots, and Khan insisted that he was president, he was going to call the shots, and Munir put him in prison. I'm giving you the shorthand version, but Munir now is clearly in charge of the country, and he's not waiting around for he's not sitting there with the United States telling him what to do. He's doing his own thing. And if any U.S. official that dares to think that they've got you got General Asim Munir on a short leash, and that he's just, he's like some Pakistani boy who's going to hop to and do what we tell him, they're in for a rude awakening, because right now Munir is really calling the shots, and he's playing, and he's working with China on this, but he's playing the driving force in creating this new Persian Gulf security architecture.
Yeah, I think the case of Imran Khan is somehow complicated because he had his differences with Asim Munir in Pakistan. Then the war in Ukraine came along, and he decided to go to Russia and talk with Russians. And the Biden administration put a lot of pressure, I assume, on Pakistan to do something about it. And you see both sides, Washington and the internal friction between Munir and Imran Khan led to that problem with Imran Khan.
Right.
It was a combination of the two.
Yeah, and when I'm talking about what, I know some people get mad at me saying, "Oh, you're supporting Munir over," and it's like, I'm not. I'm taking no position about what's going on internally in Pakistan, because it's none of my business. I may have an opinion. I can say, I think Imran Khan has been treated horribly and unjustly. But I'm an American. That's my opinion. It's like me saying, well, I think the sun's too hot today. Well, no matter what I think about the sun's doing what the sun's going to do. Okay. And it's the same with Pakistan, that the leaders in Pakistan, they need to make their decisions, and their system. I think it's even silly for me to sit down and say, oh yeah, their system's dysfunctional. It is what it is. That is for them to figure out, not for me to come in and meddle and tell them what they need to do. It'd be one thing if the Pakistani government comes to the United States and says, hey, we'd like your advice, or this is what we're thinking about doing. What would you do? Okay, that's a whole different approach. If you got someone coming asking you for advice, But that's not the United States. The United States is in the business going around telling people what they have to do. And that doesn't wear well. People get fed up with it and say, nah, you're not going to tell me what to do. We'll figure it out on our own.
Larry, J.D. Vance told Unheard, that one of the most significant outcomes of the Switzerland talks was an agreement in principle between the United States and Iran to establish a direct military communication channel aimed at preventing future escalations. And this is something new. I have never heard of a communication line between Iran and the United States directly talking to each other for de-escalation.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were no escalations between the two, by the way, before this war happening. And right now they have that as some sort of communication system. And what does that mean, in your opinion, from the military point of view? And how is that going to be used for the case of maybe Palestine or Lebanon?
Well, I can give you one example, not necessarily with respect to Iran, but how this communications channel has been used. It was used at Al Udeid Air Force Base in Qatar, at what was called the Combined Air Operations Center. And it was back when, I guess 2017, that Trump was ordering a strike on what they said were chemical weapons stocks in Syria. Now, what happened was the commanding general of the KAOK gets on the phone with his Russian counterpart, because the Russians were in this one area where the strike was going to take place. And the American told the Russian, hey, look, here's what is here's the decision. This is the order. This is what's going to be hit. This is when it's going to be hit, giving them heads up so they could get their personnel out of there, so that you could relocate assets, whatever. And so, Trump, the attack was launched on Trump's orders, and it, blew up a bunch of sand, but it didn't really destroy anything of any substance. And that was an example where that coordination, you on the one hand, you get the public view of, the United States is responding and we're really hitting them hard. But behind the scenes, it's, it's something completely different. So that could be one thing that would be seen, in, for example, they say, look, President Trump, if feels he's got to make a physical show of force, therefore we're gonna launch a bombing run on Kemsh Island at such and such time, and these are the targets that we're going to hit. And so just to be aware, and that way Iran could take steps to get personnel out of there, and United States gets to have a show of force that doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah, just using the same line that you're talking about right now, is Iran has informed the United States that it has bombed a tanker in the Strait of Hormuz. So it is the way it is right now, and it seems that you've mentioned the case of Oman and Iran. They had a statement together after the meeting,
right,
and mentioning the new mechanism to be defined in the Strait of Hormuz. Then we've seen the Omani part saying something different. Then Iranian foreign minister came out just moments before coming to this live. He said the process of the new mechanism is happening as we talk, and they're going to define it as soon as possible. It seems to me, Larry, that the United States is putting pressure on Oman behind the scene.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this goes back to the United States.
I don't see any outcome of that because Oman is not. The war has brought the Strait of Hormuz to the equation on the part of Iranians. So if Oman decides to go against Iran, I think that would totally change the Iranian equation toward Oman, because they were thinking of Oman differently. I don't know what would happen and how far the United States can put pressure on Oman.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. It's clear. That was when I first saw that, I thought, U.S. somebody put pressure on somebody, and it could have been just one element of the Omani government acting that way, and ignoring the people that had cut the deals with Iran. So there could be disagreement within Oman is not surprising.
The other point that it was reported by J.D. Vance, Larry, is that his understanding of the negotiations so far is so positive. I don't know, because we were talking about it, even he said the UAE, that was by far the most hawkish, and pro-Israeli country in the GCC countries, they're having conversations with Iranians that have never happened before, including with IRGC, the communication between IRGC and UAE about various types of economic, sort of ties that they can bring to the table between Iran and UAE. Somehow they feel that maybe by putting out some sort of economic ties between Iran and UAE or GCC countries, they can put the problem, in Lebanon aside. Is that the agenda, in your opinion?
The agenda for who?
The agenda for the United States and Israel. They feel that if they could bring Iran, with some new economic ties, that then maybe Iran would ignore what's going on Lebanon, what's going on.
No.
That is hugely delusional, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, we're way past that point. The Iran support for Lebanon now is front and center, and they're not going to back off of that. That is, that's created a new dynamic in this whole process in the Israeli-Palestinian war. We've I don't think since in the last, good God, 77 years that you've had one country stand up in such a determined fashion against Israel to say, no, if you attack, basically in this case, you attack southern Lebanon, we're going to hold you accountable and we will attack you back. It's I think that's quite significant, because it is the one country finally saying, hey, what happens in Lebanon is affecting us. And let's recall the number of Lebanese that have been killed in the last month or two exceeds the number of Palestinians that have been killed. I mean, this is I can't emphasize enough that Israel likes to pretend that it's the victim, that it's our people are suffering, our people are being killed. And so just ask a very simple question. We know how many Lebanese civilians have been killed in the last month, in June, and let's say last 2 months, May and June. How many Israeli civilians have been killed?
No one knows.
I'd say virtually none, because guarantee you, if the Israeli civilians were being killed in any quantity, we'd see their pictures on the papers. I mean, hell, they look at all the pictures they put up from October 7th. Oh, this person was killed. Oh, this person, So that's the point. Israel's doing the killing.
The new article, Larry, in Wall Street Journal says that Iran is seeking to generate billions of dollars in annual revenue by introducing charges for services in the Strait of Hormuz, as Tehran positions itself to play a greater role in managing one of the world's most important oil shipping routes. And their estimation is going to be something like $40 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And
good revenue stream.
Yeah. it's going to be, he didn't mention if it's 40 billion on the part of Iran and Oman both together, it seems, because it's going to be 40, 20,
Yeah.
20, maybe something like that.
Yeah, they have to split up the cash with Oman, which is
Yeah.
fine. That's as it should be.
Yeah. And it seems that they're not going to charge all of the tankers. The oil tankers are going to be differently treated by the new regime, the new mechanism of the Strait, than those who are simply, transporting fertilizer, I don't know, some sort of phosphate, helium, these sort of things that are in that region. It's going to be different, but we haven't seen so far the new mechanism.
Right.
Yeah. Larry, Benjamin Netanyahu said that we removed an immediate existential threat from our heads, because if we had we had not acted against Iran today, and he's talking about the nuclear bombs would have been emerged to destroy Israel. There is no statement, and since the revolution has happened in Iran, that Iran wants to nuke Israel. But
Right.
he uses the same argument that Donald Trump is using. Looking at the way that Benjamin Netanyahu is talking about in Israel to save his position in Israel, it's all about the nuclear weapons. We did this war, we started this war because of the Iran possesses the nuclear weapons or has the nuclear program to produce those weapons. So that threat has been destroyed. This is his argument to save his position in Israel. And we have the same in the United States, but nobody seems to care about that. And you don't see that one is happening in the head of Naftali Bennett, for example, because these people know how to play the game in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's gonna be removed, and it's gonna be a huge sort of, just looking at the Netanyahu, it's something like 20 years, Larry, since he took power in Israel.
Right. No, he's been the face of it. But okay, so what he's removed? You think that's going to change policy?
No, definitely that's not going to change the policy.
Right.
I'm talking about how Benjamin Netanyahu sees the situation, how he wants to save himself from being removed, because the removal of Benjamin Netanyahu would finally they're going to send him to prison.
Yeah, and ultimately, I don't think he'll be able to stop the process to remove him. And life will, again, for me, the issue is, what is going to be? Is there going to be a fundamental change in Israel's policy? And that's that's the problem. Israel is not changing its policy, and so it's going to remain in this belligerent stance until it's making choices. I think they're going to destroy itself.
They basically say they want to keep the security zones in Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza without any time limit. And that's totally against what's going on. And Larry, basically, let's assume Israel stays in the southern part of Lebanon and the fight goes on and on. Are they going to be able to stay there without suffering huge casualties?
Well, no. I mean, that's look.
I think that's the off-ramp for Donald Trump. That's the off-ramp for Donald. That could help him.
How so?
Because the reality of the battlefield for Israel, they're not gaining anything if they stay there. If they try to stay in southern part of Lebanon, how is that going to be helpful for Israelis?
Well, it's not. But again, you're assuming they're thinking rationally, and there's nothing rational about this entire thing. It's all irrational. It's all about emotion and religion as the primary driving forces. So but there comes a time. There comes a time when Israel ultimately has to admit that they're suffering. The losses are too great, that they can't continue this way, and they pull out. They just it's suffer. They're just losing too many people. I mean, that's been that way. The good God, they did it back in the 80s. in 2006. So, this is, as Yogi Berra said, this is deja vu all over again. They keep the definition of insanity, doing the same thing and expecting a different outcome. That's Israel.
The next NATO summit is going to be in Turkey, Larry. And Turkey is part of NATO, but the United States, Donald Trump right now is trying to sell new engines, something like 24 engines, jet engines to Turkey, which the Congress is totally against that. They're trying to make troubles for the Trump administration to sell those. How does the United States see Turkey strategically, Larry? Is that a friend? Is some sort of partner? Is an enemy or a potential enemy? Because that in the eyes of Israelis, Turkey is the enemy, is the enemy.
Well, the United States doesn't exactly view him as a friend. I mean, good God, if that's how a friend treats you, you wouldn't be friends much longer with him. So no, look, the United States sees him as a potential paycheck. They'll buy U.S. equipment, and yet throughout the process, Turkey throughout the years has been continually disrespected and treated as a second-class citizen by the other NATO members, the Europeans in particular. So we want Turkey when it's convenient for us when we need them. Turkey's base, Incirlik, is something the United States has always used. Yet